Israeli War Cabinet member Benny Gantz has announced his centrist National Unity Party has introduced a bill to dissolve the Israeli parliament, which would trigger an early election. So what's next? Well, it's unclear when lawmakers might vote on the bill, which requires a majority vote to pass. Israeli law stipulates there cannot be another vote for 6 months if the motion fails. Right, for further clarity, joining us, VOA correspondent Ricki Rosen at the moment. Thanks so much, Ricki, for joining us on the World 24/7. We are aware that Benny Gantz is a long-term rival of Mr. Netanyahu, and he has increasingly been critical of Israel's military campaign in Gaza, saying that the government has deprioritized the safe return of the remaining hostages. But how significant of a blow is this bill to Netanyahu? How likely is this bill going to be passed?
I think it's very unlikely that the bill to dissolve the Knesset, the parliament, and call for new elections will pass because the government coalition includes 64 out of 120 politicians from the parliament. And so they have a majority, even a slim majority, will defeat this bill to dissolve the government and call for new elections. There were 3 similar bills that were proposed 2 weeks ago, and they all lost.
But if Israel goes to polls today, who's likely to win? Is Netanyahu likely to garner enough votes to form a coalition this time around?
Until recently, Gantz was leading Netanyahu by a very wide margin. And he had wide support from the public and from other politicians in the opposition. They did a poll just yesterday that showed that for the first time he is losing to Netanyahu. But it doesn't necessarily mean that Netanyahu would be able to continue being prime minister, because in the Israeli system, the prime minister rules with a coalition. And they say that even though Gantz has declined in popularity and Netanyahu has risen in popularity, Netanyahu would still not have enough votes to form a coalition this time if there were elections. The problem is that Gantz might also not have enough votes to form a coalition, because he would be dependent on getting votes from both the left and the right, and the only thing that would tie his government together would be the opposition to Netanyahu.
Well, so far, Mr. Netanyahu seems averse to bringing up the idea of ending the war in Gaza. But are the cracks deepening as far as the war cabinet there is concerned?
Definitely. About 2 weeks ago, Gantz said that he was giving Netanyahu an ultimatum of 3 weeks until June 8th, next week, in which to come up with a plan for what they call the day after the war against Hamas in Gaza finishes. Netanyahu will not even bring up the idea in his cabinet because he knows that the minute that he starts talking about ending the war and the day after, the far right members of his coalition will bring down the government. And then he will not have enough votes to avoid going to elections. It would be a crisis that he will not take that chance to do. So he has never even brought up the idea of the day after. And Gantz is saying that he will leave the war cabinet if this issue is not resolved. But he can leave, and Netanyahu will still have a majority of votes.
Well, Ricki, thanks so much, as always, for joining us with the latest on the Israel-Gaza war.